Okay, let's dive in. If you've ever felt, a bit unsatisfied with the standard explanations for gravity.
Like Einstein's curved spacetime, maybe?
Yeah.
Or Newton's action at a distance?
Exactly. If that abstract math or that sort of inexplicable pull just doesn't quite click for you, then this deep dive should be really interesting. We're getting into something called Graviton Pressure Theory, or GPT. And, well, it's ambitious. It challenges a lot.
It really does. And the core mission, you could say, is restoring causality to gravity.
Causality, meaning a clear how.
Precisely. For decades, gravity's been treated either as just there, a phenomenon without a real mechanism, or is just a mathematical description, like mass bends space-time. Okay, how?
Right. What's doing the bending?
GPT says we need an answer. It wants to know the mechanics, the why behind mass interaction. It redefines gravity completely. Not geometry, not attraction, but a real physical directional force.
Driven by pressure.
Driven entirely by pressure. That's the fundamental shift.
And that really is the initial hurdle, isn't it? We have to sort of mentally throw out that idea of things being pulled together.
Yeah, that's gone.
The whole basis here is push. It's a mechanical system where objects are pushed by something external. Structured, directional, physical pressure.
Exactly. And if we're talking about force in a mechanical sense, well, any force needs a transmitter, doesn't it?
Something has to carry that push.
Right. Which means we need to rethink the smallest unit of that force. We have to talk about the graviton.
Okay. So in standard physics, like quantum field theory, the graviton is, well, it's mostly theoretical, isn't it? A massless spin-2 boson placeholder. It's kind of math looking for a particle.
Pretty much, yeah. It's needed to make the theories work together, but we haven't found it. GPP says forget that placeholder. The graviton is a real structured thing.
Structured how?
It describes it as a structured wave packet, a coherence-preserving carrier. It's not just a point particle. It has an internal structure, and crucially, it's the agent delivering that directional pressure.
So it presses, it doesn't pull, it flows.
It flows, it presses, and it interacts with matter it passes through. Its behavior gets altered.
Okay, so if these wave packets are flowing and pressing, what does that make mass? Because our usual idea of mass, just the amount of stuff or energy, that doesn't quite seem to fit a pressure model directly.
It changes the definition. In GPT, mass isn't passive stuff. It's fundamentally a resistor.
A resistor? To what?
To coherent compression from these flowing gravitons. Think of mass as an organized, coherent field pattern like its internal structure is ordered. And that structure inherently resists being compressed by this directional flow.
Okay.
It even quantifies this resistance. There's a property called the coherence resistance coefficient, kappa m. Basically, how strongly does this object's internal coherence push back against the flow?
Right. Okay. Coherent compression is a bit dense. Let's try to visualize it. You mentioned an analogy they use, like a stone in a river.
Exactly. That's a great way to picture it. Imagine a fast-flowing river that's your field of gravitons, and you place a stone in it. The stone represents the mass. Now, the stone doesn't magically pull the water towards it, does it?
No, of course not. The water hits it.
Right. The water flow is interrupted, it slows down, bunches up, and the pressure increases on the upstream side of the stone.
And behind the stone?
Behind the stone, there's a sheltered area, a zone where the flow is reduced, less dense, a pressure shadow, effectively.
Ah, so the stone gets pushed downstream because the pressure hitting it from the front, the upstream side, is now stronger than the reduced pressure pushing it from behind, from the shadowed side.
Precisely. That difference in pressure, that net pressure differential created by the stone resisting the flow, that is what GPT defines as the gravitational force.
So it's not attraction at all. It's just being pushed more from one side than the other.
Exactly. And the more effectively the stone resists the flow, the higher its coherence resistance coefficient, the bigger the disruption, the deeper that pressure shadow, and the stronger the resulting push.
Okay, that shifts the focus from the object itself to the environment it's sitting in.
Yeah.
We can't picture space as just empty anymore, or like a static grid.
Absolutely not. That's a huge part of GPT. Forget the void. Forget the static geometry. Space is filled with active graviton flow fields.
Flow fields? Like currents?
Kind of, yeah. But not just random chaotic flow. They're described as highly structured corridors of coherent graviton movement. These flows are the medium. Everything interacts through them and within them.
And the force, the push, only shows up when something gets in the way.
That's the key. In empty space where the flow is, let's say, unimpeded, the pressure is balanced on all sides.
Yeah.
Even if the flow is incredibly intense, there's no net force pushing you one way or another.
That's the nabla-dollar thing. Steady flow, no net push.
Exactly. But put an object there, obstruct the flow, and bam, you get that pressure differential. You get the gravitational shadow downstream.
And that answers the most basic question. Why does an apple fall down?
It's not being pulled down. It's being pushed down continuously by the greater graviton pressure coming from directions above it, where there's less obstruction compared to the pressure from below, which is reduced by the Earth blocking the flow.
Okay, hang on. Let me push back on that slightly. If the Earth is blocking gravitons from below and creating a shadow, doesn't that imply the gravitons are mostly coming from, like, one direction up? And what about the sun? Wouldn't the sun cast an enormous shadow? Couldn't we, like, fall up if we passed into the sun's shadow relative to some background source?
Good question. That's a really important clarification. We're not talking about a single light bulb in space casting a sharp 2D shadow.
Okay.
Think of the graviton flow field as omnidirectional. It's coming from everywhere, constantly interacting. The shadow isn't a complete void behind the Earth. It's more like a localized zone of reduced coherent density in the flow immediately around and downstream of the mass.
So it's a 3D effect, a lessening of the flow density nearby, not a total blockage from one direction.
Exactly. And it's dynamic. So when you have multiple masses like the Earth and the Moon, it gets complicated.
Right. It wouldn't just be adding their individual forces together, like in Newton's model.
No, not simple linear superposition. GPT calls it field interference. Multiple masses create these overlapping, interacting zones of reduced pressure, these interacting shadows.
And that creates...
It generates complex but stable corridors and patterns in the flow field. These patterns, these interferences, are what govern things like planetary orbits. It's about the dynamic structure of the field, not just point masses pulling each other.
Wow. Okay, so our everyday feeling of weight standing on the ground, that's just us caught in this pressure dynamic.
It is, fundamentally. Your weight is the measure of your body's resistance to that incredibly strong, generally downward-directed graviton flow.
Because the Earth below us is creating that pressure shadow.
Right. And the ground stops you from being compressed further downwards by that flow. So you're stuck in this dynamic balance. Graviton's pressing down hard, your mass resisting that compression, and the ground pushing back against the compression.
And that continuous resistance, that sort of internal strain against the flow, that's what we feel as weight.
Exactly. That's the experience of weight, according to GPT.
Okay, this whole foundation, gravity as pressure, mass as resistance, it sets the stage for what feels like the really mind-bending part of GPT, the bit with potentially huge implications.
You mean inertia.
Yeah, rewriting inertia.
This is, I think, where GPT gets really radical and potentially revolutionary. Because classical inertia, well, it's just there, isn't it? An intrinsic property of mass. Objects resist changes in motion. Why? Physics just says they do.
It's just a rule. EFMA.
Right. GPT throws that out and says inertia isn't intrinsic. It's an active field-based interaction. It calls it field memory.
Field memory. So the field remembers.
Okay, so when an object moves, especially coherently, like in a straight line at constant speed, it's not just passively drifting through the field. It's interacting with it.
It's affecting the graviton flow around it.
Yes. Critically, GPT proposes it absorbs gravitons asymmetrically. It takes them in more from the direction it's moving towards.
So it's sort of depleting the field slightly in front of it.
Exactly. It's carving out a channel of reduced pressure, reduced resistance right along its path, like leaving a wake, but kind of in reverse, a channel ahead of it.
Yeah.
GPT calls this a graviton corridor.
A path of least resistance that the object itself created.
Precisely. And that leads to what they call corridor loyalty. Why does an object in motion stay in motion with no extra energy needed? It's not just because. It's because it's now following the optimized path it already sculpted.
Whoa.
The field effectively remembers that path of motion by having that corridor imprinted in it, making it easier for the object to continue along that line than to deviate or stop.
So, Newton's first law isn't a fundamental law. It's an emergent property of the object interacting with and structuring the field.
That's the implication, yes. An object in motion stays in motion because it's locked into this low-resistance channel it carved itself.
Okay. Wow. Then acceleration changing speed or direction, that must be where the effort comes in.
That's the cost of rewriting the field. To accelerate, you have to force your way out of that comfortable low-resistance corridor you were just in.
You have to push into a region where the field hasn't been prepared yet, where the resistance is higher.
Exactly. You have to establish a new absorption pattern, carve a new corridor. The force needed for acceleration, the F, is literally the energy cost of rewriting the field's memory. You're paying an energetic tax to change the established pattern.
That completely reframes momentum too, then. It's not just mass times velocity anymore.
No, it becomes something much more physical, more structural. In GPT, momentum is about the coupling between the object's internal coherence, its own structural integrity, and the sort of depth and persistence of that graviton corridor it has established in the field.
So it's like coherence expressed over time, locked into field alignment.
That's a great way to put it. It's a physical structure, a residue left in the field by the object's motion. It's traceable.
Okay, if momentum and inertia are these physical field structures, that should help explain some other phenomena without resorting to, say, curved spacetime, right?
It should. And GPT proposes explanations for several classical effects.
Like time dilation. We're used to hearing clocks tick slower near a big mass because time itself is warped. How does GPT handle that?
It frames it as coherence delay. Think about how a clock works internally, whether it's atomic vibrations or gears turning. It relies on internal forces transmitting signals, right? Electromagnetic interactions, mechanical pushes, whatever. Now, place that clock near a large mass, deep in that dense, pressured graviton flow field. According to GPT, that intense, coherent pressure constantly resists the internal workings of the clock.
Like trying to swim through syrup versus air. Everything inside the clock moves a bit slower?
Kind of, yeah. It causes tiny temporal phase delays in the transmission of those internal forces. Every oscillation, every tick is minutely delayed because the clock's guts are essentially fighting against a denser, more resistive field.
And those tiny delays add up over time.
Exactly. They accumulate, and we observe it as the clock running measurably slower. It's presented as a mechanical consequence of field resistance, not a fundamental warping of time itself.
Interesting. Okay, what about free fall? That feeling of weightlessness when you're falling. We normally say it's because gravity is acting, but you're moving with it perfectly.
GPT calls it the illusion of weightlessness. It's definitely not an absence of force. Remember, you're still being pushed hard by the graviton flow. But when you're in free fall, you are in a state of perfect flow alignment. You're moving perfectly within that graviton corridor. The pressure is essentially uniform on all sides relative to your motion.
So there's no net difference pushing one part of your body harder than another, no internal strain.
Precisely. No net pressure differential across your body causing that feeling of weight or strain. You feel comfortable, but you are absolutely still under immense directional pressure from the field.
Okay, one more. Gravitational lensing. We see light bending around stars and galaxies, and the explanation is usually that light is following the curve of spacetime created by the mass.
GPT takes the curve out. Light, being an electromagnetic wave, propagates through the graviton flow field, and near a massive object, that field isn't uniform, remember, there's a pressure gradient, a density gradient.
Right, the shadow effect, the resistance.
So as light enters this region of differential pressure and flow density, GPT suggests the field itself acts like a medium with a variable refractive index.
Like light bending when it goes from air into water? Snell's law.
Exactly like that. The light is simply being refracted as it passes through these zones of varying graviton density and pressure. The path changes direction.
And to us, looking from far away, that path looks curved.
Correct. You get the same observational result, the bent light path. But GPT provides a mechanical causal explanation based on interaction with the field rather than invoking abstract space-time curvature.
Wow. Okay, this has been, well, a really deep dive. This theory completely reinserts mechanism back into gravity. It ties everything together with this idea of
gravity as the emergent behavior of coherence navigating resistance.
Yeah. And the universe isn't this static geometric thing, but it's actively, what was the phrase?
Coherently structured by these constant invisible fields of graviton flow.
And I guess that's the big takeaway for you listening. If this model holds, it makes knowledge really actionable, especially that idea about inertia and momentum.
Absolutely. If momentum is basically a structural memory in the field at graviton corridor, it opens up some pretty radical possibilities, doesn't it? For propulsion, for instance. Well, maybe future tech wouldn't focus just on brute force. Bigger rockets, more thrust pushing against the environment.
Right.
Instead, maybe we could focus on actively shaping the environment ahead of us. If we could learn to manipulate coherence, Maybe we could, I don't know, preform a graviton corridor in front of a spacecraft? Or temporarily disrupt the field's resistance right where we want to go?
Lowering that cost of rewriting the field.
Exactly, making acceleration much, much easier. Motion becomes less about fighting resistance and more about engineering the field to be welcoming. Engineering field hospitality, maybe.
That's a fascinating thought. So the provocative idea to leave everyone with is, if inertia and momentum are really just these structured patterns in the field, like a physical memory stored in space itself, how much of what we think of as fundamental limits, like the sheer energy needed to accelerate things, maybe even the speed of light limit, how much of that is just down to us not yet understanding how to manipulate or, erase and rewrite that field memory ahead of us?
That is definitely something to chew on. How much are we limited by physics? And how much by our current understanding of how to interact with the field?
Food for thought as you navigate your own corridors of resistance.